So, hello everyone. I'm Inge, and I'm going to talk about autonomy from buzzword to business value. Autonomous teams have been buzzing for a time now, and it's exciting, it's fun, but it's also really frustrating because this topic is quite polarizing. People have strong opinions about it, and there's a lot of arguing going around as well. And the word itself, autonomy or autonomous teams, it has this buzzword feel to it. But there's something real here as well. Something is emerging, something is evolving, and we're hearing more and more people are expecting autonomy and autonomous teams at their workplace. And we're also going to need it going forward because we have higher and higher levels of complexity. So we need more autonomous teams and self-organization in order to adapt and meet with this. Ooh, this isn't happening again. So I've been told that this might be happening a bit because there's something off. Okay. So I still think we are in a transition period. So when I go around to organizations and teams to try to make sense of autonomy and self-organization, I try to marinate a bit in what does it really mean. And David White also in the keynote was talking about the language. We really need to get the language. When we connect deeper to what it really means and understand it, it's much easier to act naturally from it and also to not just have these fancy words. So I'm Inge Hervik. I work as an enterprise agile coach and a trainer at Distilled. And I've started out my career as a developer, and then I worked into leadership, and now I work with leadership development, training, coaching, and mentoring. My passion is really to support teams and organizations towards having more autonomous teams and being more self-organized. Because I really, really believe if we can start showing up in a different way with each other, creating networks of collaboration, we're going to see better results together, having better outcomes. And when we start seeing that happening in the teams, we're getting curious and thinking, how can we do this for our organizations as well? And when we see we get the outcomes by showing up differently with each other in our organizations, we also start thinking, wait, maybe we can do some of this at home, in our local communities, maybe even on a national level or a global level. So I really am passionate about this, showing up with accountability, creating collaborative networks, and also working better together. So let's start with the end in mind, the why. Why are we doing autonomy and self-organization? And we need to look at the business value. The business value has to remain in focus. When we start moving our attention towards self-organization for self-organization's sake, we start to lose something. Because autonomy and self-organization are not the end results. They are something we're doing in order to get to some business outcomes. If you start getting autonomy for autonomy's sake, what you'll end up with is more politics. You're going to get more conflicts between managers and your teams because you don't really have a clear focus on what you're trying to achieve together. You don't have the direction, and you're still trying to argue how to get there. So we need to have focus on the business outcome, and the business outcome is whatever you're producing or the service you're providing as an organization. So autonomy is a choice, autonomy is a strategy, and it's also a way we choose to operate towards our business outcomes. So if autonomy isn't the outcome, there's still benefits that we can have. And the first one I'd like to talk about is adaptability. Again, going back to the complexity, we're seeing higher levels of complexity. We need adaptability to meet that complexity. And when we have this adaptability, we start seeing teams swiftly responding to market dynamics, to new trends, to customer needs. And we also see teams making relevant and timely decisions at the point of work. They don't have to wait to do the right thing. They don't have to wait for approval from some central control. They can just make the good decisions on their own. And then you also have local ownership with a holistic perspective. So teams taking ownership for what they do, what their outcomes are, but also what the impact is on the greater scale, on the holistic organizational level. You get accountable for outcomes, and you get commitment to the purpose of the team and the commitment to the purpose of the organization. So it needs to be local ownership with a focus on what are we going to do together. The last thing I'll go through is greater impact with less overhead. With more autonomy and self-organization, you get more engaged employees. Currently, we have around 30% actively engaged people in our workforce. We can get this higher. So we need to. So we get more engaged employees. We get more energy. We also get reduced cost of control, reduced cost of coordination, and also reduced cost of bureaucracy. And this isn't a comprehensive list, because you also get these, and you get these. So if this is so great, why can't we seem to make it work? Is it just enough to trust people and get on with it? How do we get from the buzzwords to the business value? I think we are now starting to get a bit fired up, maybe even a bit slower now because it was a party last night, but now we get to the definitions at last. So let's look at self-organization. What is really self-organization? And I like to talk about self-organization as organizing towards shared outcomes without central control and without external coordination. So the shared outcome is what we are going to do together. What are we achieving together? And we can do that without central control, not without control. We have distributed control. We are participating in having that control. But we also have without external coordination, because we can do that ourselves. We are able to coordinate ourselves. That's why we can do self-organization. A simple example of this is just a crowd on a busy shopping street trying to get past each other. They are able to reach that shared outcome of getting past each other without having anyone centrally controlling who goes where or coordinating the effort. And it's so obvious. And the outcome here is so obvious. And that is an important thing to notice. When the outcome, the shared outcome, is so obvious to us, it's going to be effortless to move towards it together. These people on the crowded street, they won't talk about the shared outcome because it's obvious to them. And this goes also for organizations and for teams. When the shared outcomes, what we are going to do together, is so obvious to us, we start self-organizing towards what makes sense. It just happens. So self-organization is about organizing towards shared outcomes without distributed control and external coordination. Autonomy. I wouldn't call a busy street or crowd on a busy street as an autonomous unit, because it's only a crowd. But I like to talk about autonomy as a system capable of acting based on its own evaluation in pursuit of its goals. So we're noticing there's a unity in here. It's a system, and they're capable of making decisions. They're evaluating and acting on that evaluation. They're making decisions as a unit towards their goals. And the evaluation is both about the internal information we have, how are we thinking around this, but also getting information from outside. It's not isolation. So we're using information from within the system and from outside of the system to make up our mind in pursuit of our goals. So we're noticing now an identification as well. We're noticing that it's a we, it's a system, it's something that we can talk about as a unit. And then we have a pursuit of goals. Pursuit of goals is direction, it's the intention we have. So the pursuit of goals could be something of an internal desire. We would like something. It could also be an assignment or task we take on. So we choose to take on this task. Our intention is to solve it. So note now that autonomy is based on self-organization, but it's hinting towards self-identification. There's a we here as well. Self-organization is about how we organize, how we coordinate. Autonomy is more about who makes the decision, who makes the evaluations and are acting upon them, but also where the intention lives. We have the intention to solve this assignment or the task or meet our desire. So an example of autonomy could be a group of friends jointly trying to decide where to eat at a restaurant. So this group of people, these friends, they will identify as a we. We are a group of friends. And we are able to look internally of what would we like to have for dinner, what options are available to us, and acting on that in pursuit of getting something to eat or getting our hunger met. The last thing I'll look at for definitions is team. So a good question to ask is, what is making a group of people into a team? So you have two things you need, and that's a shared goal and interdependence. We need to interact in order to get that shared goal. So for instance, a busload of people on the way to the beach to sunbathe is a group of people with a shared goal. They are not a team. If they need to cross a bridge and that bridge is broken down, then for a while they need to go out of the bus and fix the bridge together. They need to interact in order to create that shared goal. So they're interacting in order to achieve something greater than what you can do by yourself. So again, notice the we identity. And we also all remember there isn't an I in team. So let's stay with this we concept for a while, this we identity, because this is an important concept. We have a tendency to optimize for our we identity. If I identify as a .NET developer, first and foremost, I'm going to optimize to create the best .NET code. If I identify as a team creating a ticket app, my optimization would be towards creating that best ticket app. And I might be in conflict with this other stupid team over there, creating the payment service. There's an interesting thing there. A hero leader, a person saying, I'm taking care of my own. They are optimizing for a part of the system. They're optimizing for the department or the team. I'm taking care of my own people against the rest of the people in the organization, maybe. So if we want business value, if we want higher levels of business value, we need to start having that we identity for the whole organization. How can we connect together to create that shared outcome that we want? So notice a team is a part of an organization, just as an individual is part of a team. It's a part of a relationship. So the question you can ask yourself now is, which we identity are you optimizing for? Where are your identity belonging? If you have a lot of conflicts around the organization, just consider, what is my we identity? What is their we identity? Or do we have actually a shared outcome that we can work towards? So do remember, we are doing this together. And now we're really looking at understanding what this self-organization autonomous team might be. And I want to share a statement from a team. And just look at this. As a self-organizing autonomous team, we make decisions based on internal and external information in order to serve a function or achieve a goal. We do this without needing external coordination or central control, also when we interact with other teams. We are accountable for our own outcomes, our contributions to the organization, and the impact it has. So notice the ownership in this. We are making decisions. We are accountable for our outcomes, but also the impact it has on the organization and on other teams. Notice the adaptability in this. We are able to coordinate with other teams without anyone telling us who we should talk to or not should talk to. We're able to do this by ourselves. We're able to start making relevant, sensible decisions when we are working together with other people, together with other teams, in order to create a shared outcome. So, yes. So just notice how great this sounds. But there are some prerequisites in order to get there. And I'm going to take you through 3 prerequisites for the teams, and then we'll look at what do we need in order to make sense of this. So the first thing is, do we have a purpose? Seems obvious. But it is our shared purpose. Do we know together what our purpose is? Or do we have someone who has told us what it was and we have forgotten it? We need to have this idea of a shared outcome or purpose, and we need to know it. If everyone also has different sense of what this purpose is or these outcomes we are creating, then we're going in all different directions. Self-organization is going to look like everyone running in their own direction. So we need a purpose, and this also gives us the golden thread. So if this is the overall purpose, how am I contributing it to the different layers of that purpose? Then we have the motivating purpose. And motivation there isn't just because it's a nice word. We really, really need to care about that purpose if we are going to self-organize towards it. If it's not important to me, whatever's over there, why should I contribute? Why should I spend effort and time towards this? And what you'll see in organizations, especially if you have a distributed leadership team or similar distributed team, people will start optimizing locally because it's not important whatever happens on the larger scale. So if it's not important to us, we won't contribute into this purpose. So we need also that motivation. There's a commitment there as well. So when I really want that purpose to happen, I'm committing myself to doing it, also when the task might not be interesting. I want a clean kitchen, so I'll put the dishes into the dishwasher, even though I don't like it. The outcome is important to me. Same with organizations. So we need to have a motivating purpose that overlaps with our values. The last thing is psychological safety, and this has been talked a lot about the last couple of years, but it's still really important. Do we even dare to contribute? Is it safe to contribute? If I contribute and it doesn't work as well as you thought it would be, will you humiliate me? Will you ridicule me? Is it safe to try and contribute? If it's not safe, why should I join the self-organization of this? I'm going to stand back. I'm going to do stuff that keeps me safe. And things in an organization to keep me safe, that is looking like I understand what I'm talking about. Looking like I'm busy. Not raising my hand when I need some help. But also going into politics, hiding behind rules, hiding behind roles, all of that stuff in order to keep safe. So even when we have a motivating purpose, we need to feel safe in order to actually engage in self-organization. Things you can do here, and this is becoming quite common, is creating team contracts, but also team-of-team contracts. How are we going to work together so that we do that well and feel safe? So you can also measure this. You can talk with teams about these things. I often do. I just go through these questions to talk about with them. Do you know what the purpose is of what you're doing and how that's connected to the overall goal? You could do a thought experiment, saying, if I went into your team at the coffee machine and asked them about the 3 most important business outcomes and how you are connected with them, would people give the same answer or different? So you can just find different ways of asking these 3 questions to check, do we have this? Do we have what is needed in order for people to actually start self-organizing towards a shared outcome? If you get a high level on all of these 3, I promise you, you will see magic. So we also have some prerequisites for ourselves, or 3 questions we can ask ourselves. And the first question is, do you really want self-organization and autonomy? I mentioned earlier, this is a choice. You do not have to have self-organization and autonomy, but you don't get the benefits if you don't. That's okay. But if you really want to tell teams what to do and how to do it, self-organization isn't for you. If you are more of the person saying, well, these are the outcomes we are looking for, what do you need in order for that to happen? Then this starts making more sense. So this is a people-centric or people-first approach. We're asking teams, what do you need? These are the outcomes we think we need. What do you need for this to happen? This is the way we try to get to self-organization. So if we want to do you really want to self-organization autonomy, or do you want to tell teams what to do or how to do it? The next one is, do you believe people have good intentions from their perspective at least? Can you believe that people in general have good intentions with what they say and what they do from their perspective? That doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with them, but from where they're standing, they thought it was a good idea. To get my head around that, my mentor, she told me that she'd never met a person walking out the door in the morning and saying to themselves, today I will do something stupid. We all have a tendency to think we're going to do something smart, something good, in that moment at least. After the fact, we might see that, oh, that was stupid, but we thought it was a good idea. So can we believe that our teams and our employees actually have good intentions with what they do? And if you do not think that, well, why would you self-organize? Why would you let them be autonomous if they don't have any good intentions? This is a choice. We can choose to believe this. We can choose to go in this direction. The last one is, do you think people can believe, do you believe that people can think well for themselves? We have a tendency to have a need to think for other people. And this need is going to show up when you're sitting on the tip of your chair, they are speaking, and you're like, ooh, 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 I need to convince you. I need to have you thinking like me. So can we believe that people can think well for themselves, also when we're not agreeing? Or do we have that need to think for them? We're not saying that all people now suddenly and magically have all of the competencies in the world and we can't add something, but we need at least for to think that our teams are able to think well for themselves. If we start to try to set direction, tell them how to think, well, why would we let them self-organize and be autonomous if we are doing the thinking for them even? So, do you believe people can think well for themselves? If not, probably self-organization is not for you. So, do ask yourself these questions. So, how do we actually get to self-organization and autonomous teams? How do we get to these promises? Well, we need leadership. And notice I'm saying leadership. I'm not necessarily saying leaders. Formal leaders are optional. But when leaders exist, their role is not to dictate, to control, or even to coordinate. The role of leaders is to serve the organization so that the organization can create outcomes. Think of leaders as an enabling force, supporting conditions so that the teams can collaborate and actually work out how to solve these problems that we have. So leadership needs to be serving, especially if we want autonomy and self-organizing teams. But what do we mean by leadership when we're talking about self-organization and autonomy? Well, I like this model. This model is from Center for Creative Leadership, and it's a very simple model, but for me, it also is a profound model. We start with the direction. Again, we need to have a shared understanding of where are we going. What is that direction? What is our business outcome? And we need to understand it together. And this isn't the traditional top-down setting of direction. We need to have everyone think it's obvious to us. What are we going to do together? So this is also the golden thread, and leadership in this role is trying to connect all of people to the action they are doing and how they are impacting each other so that they can actually achieve this goal. So we have leaders not setting direction, but holding direction. If you set direction, you centralize the thinking into a small group of people. If you hold the direction, visualize the direction, then you're actually distributing the awareness around this. And that is inviting the collective wisdom of the organization to solve these problems. What do you need in order to make these outcomes? Then we have alignment. Alignment is how are things fitting together. So what am I doing impacting what you are doing so that we can create something together? We need to see that our efforts are actually aligning, fitting together towards our shared outcome. For leadership roles, that means that we need to, again, visualize the work we are doing, create good ways for collaboration, good communication lines, having people speak to each other so they can coordinate internally and externally with other teams and the environment. And finally, we also get to the commitment. Commitment is about this motivating purpose. We're connecting to something larger than ourselves. We really, really want this direction to happen. That is the commitment we are looking for. We're not having leaders trying to force people to commit. It's more about inspiring them to connect to what the direction is or the purpose is. We need them to connect to their intrinsic motivation so that they will create, they feel a belonging to this, and also commitment towards what we are doing together. So to summarize this, direction isn't something leaders set, it's something they hold and make continuously available. So it makes sense to people, so it becomes obvious to people. Alignment isn't something leaders control, it's something they facilitate by fostering meaningful interactions. And commitment isn't something leaders demand, it's something they inspire by connecting people to more deeper purpose or deeply motivating purpose. And now you're noticing it's exciting, it's fun. So let's go into the tips. What can we do? So how do we get there more practically? If you like this and you've decided, well, autonomy might be for us, well, if you're going to implement that, implement it on the basis of the same values and the principles of self-organization and autonomy. If you start telling people or selling to people or convincing or pushing, you are going to get resistance. Either if you try pushing or telling upwards or doing the same downwards, top down. I like to say, if you meet resistance, stop pushing. You are creating some of the resistance that you're meeting. Telling people to self-organize doesn't work. It doesn't even make sense. I would like you to self-organize towards what I would like you to do. So self-organization is about having that direction so people can think well for themselves towards creating that outcome. So do not tell people, do not sell, and stop pushing. Another thing is that demanding autonomy from your leaders. This is a similar telling. So demanding autonomy from your leaders is going to invite skepticism and defensive behavior. Because we need to be autonomous. I'm telling you, give us all of the autonomy. What are you going to do it for? Start instead of inviting for co-creation. Ask them, what outcomes are we looking for? I would like to contribute to those. How can I do that? How can I do more of this together with you? So it's an invitation. It's a co-creation. Be curious about their intent, their perspective. They might see it differently, but we can have adult conversations about this. The next one is consider impact on business outcomes. If you're trying to move towards autonomy and self-organization without considering business outcomes, you are going to meet a lot of resistance. So one thing you can do for yourself or together with your team or a leadership team is check in with yourself. Do we know the 3 top business outcomes we currently have? What are they? If we introduce self-organization and autonomy, which of these 3 is going to be impacted? Which will get benefits from it? And which will be at risk? If we don't have the answer to this, we don't have the leverage. We don't have the clarity to actually engage in meaningful conversations. Because remember, autonomy isn't the outcome you're looking for. The business outcome is what you're really trying to do. Autonomy is one way of moving towards that. I think it's really good, but it isn't an outcome in itself. So it needs to be considered with the business outcomes, or you will be stopped, or it will just fizzle out. The next thing, and we talked a lot about having that shared understanding, so try facilitating for some shared understanding. We have a tendency to think that, well, someone told us the shared the purpose or the outcome. It's probably it. Okay, start from there, and then spend 5 minutes in the beginning of a meeting or a workshop and just ask people to write on Post-its, what do you think our outcome is of being together? What is our shared outcome? It's very interesting what happens. Sometimes you get loads of stickies. Maybe they are overlapping somewhat, but it's quite a big diversity because we haven't thought about it really. So what makes sense to me about the outcome is different from what you are making sense of. I did this week actually with the leadership group, and there was a lot of different colors or the different topics around what we thought we are going to do together. The other thing you might see is only a few. If there's only a few stickies, then it might be that people aren't feeling safe to say what they think it is because they might not know, or some other things. So if there's very few, try then to do it more in groups or in pairs in the beginning so they start feeling more safe. So get to the shared outcome. What are we doing together? What I like to do after that is connecting with the motivation. So what parts of the golden thread or the shared outcome or what we're doing together, what is motivating to you about that? And you don't need to use the word motivating. You can use the word, so from all of these things, what is important to do for you together? And that's a really interesting conversation starter as well, because sometimes they will say, well, none of that is really important. That's just what we are going to do together. So notice the lack of commitment from the start. So if it isn't important what we've just written up on our shared outcomes, other things are important. It might be important. I'm not saying it's not important, but that also indicates we're not doing something important together. So we're not going to get that self-organization and autonomy towards these outcomes. Or we're not connected to them. And that was also one of the things that happened this week, was that we weren't really connected to it. So we had ideas of what the shared outcome was, but the important thing is back home with my team, with my group, with my department. So then we need to connect the dots. What is here, shared outcome, and how is it important going back? That's the golden thread. And spend some time on this, because if you're just telling them that it's going to be important, you're not going to get engagement, you're not going to get commitment. You need to listen. You need to listen for what they think is important. Be curious about their perspective. So we have also the 3 questions I showed you. Do ask yourself these. Do ask your teams, your leadership groups, these questions, but do it with empathy and honesty. If you're going into shaming or blaming around these questions, you're going to get a defensive behavior, but you're also going to get people to rationalize around it instead. Yes, obviously, we think people have good intentions, but people can't just do whatever they want. Well, if they have good intentions. So they're going to rationalize around this if you're not meeting this with empathy and honesty. Have a real conversation, not just go through it and check the boxes. If you also want to have your teams checking in with good intentions of other teams, let them get to know each other. We have a tendency to mistrust the intention of people we don't know. And this also goes for leaders. Get to know the teams so that you can start believing in their good intentions as well. So get to know each other. It increases safety, but it also increases our curiosity of other people's intentions. Facilitating collaboration towards shared outcomes. So one thing is having shared outcomes, but we also need to have collaboration, especially between teams and departments. So within the team, it's easier. Between teams, it can sometimes be harder. So one of the tools I really like there is OKRs. And I know a lot of people have used OKRs and maybe not gotten all of the benefits of using it well. So the way I like to use OKRs or similar tools is as conversation starters or collaboration tools. So these are our objectives. How are we impacting you and your objectives? And how is this collaboration impacting a larger part of the organization? So get curious about how your own objectives are impacting other teams or other departments, but also how they are impacting you. That is the conversation we need to have in order to really get that we identity. Because the OKRs, the overall thing, is the we, what our organization is doing. And if we're only having an OKR for ourselves, this is my focus, I don't care about you, well, we won't get the benefits of a we won't get the benefits of the organization and self-organization. So, learn simple coaching. Absolutely. Also learn advanced coaching. But start at least with simple coaching. Learn to ask good questions. Learn to mirror what you're seeing. Learn to listen. These 3 or 4 questions, you can start by just copying them and ask these every time you start the conversations with other teams or even with you at home. What are you trying to achieve? What is your goal? What have you already tried? What options do you see? And what would you like to do now? So notice we're facilitating thinking, but we're also laying groundwork for autonomy. We're supporting them in their thinking so they can evaluate and then act on that, making decisions towards a goal. And we also get to be curious about people's thinking and intention because we are waiting until we actually start giving them our advice. So if you start giving advice before you've heard what they've tried already, you're going to give them advice about what they've already done. So just wait a bit. Facilitate the thinking first. So this is also from the GROW model if you're curious about coaching. So arguments. I saved the best for last, the arguments, the misconceptions. So there's a lot of arguments around this, and my favorite one is leaders need to set direction and boundaries. That is what leaders are for. We are setting direction, we're setting boundaries for the teams. So remember, leaders hold and visualize direction. Direction and boundaries are usually more set by the environment and the market than by the leaders themselves. So leaders need to visualize what they're seeing. They need to hold it for the team so that the teams can make sense of it themselves. So leaders should be instead of saying, this is the way, they should be saying, we're seeing these trends appearing. We think this is what it means. We think we're looking for these outcomes. What do you need in order to make this happen? That is holding and visualizing direction instead of being the central thinker that is telling the direction, setting direction. You're centralizing thinking when you set direction. We need to hold the direction, make it visible, so it makes sense to the people doing the work. So, yeah, leaders don't set the direction. So, autonomy is independence. And this comes more from a thinking like, we are autonomous now, we don't have to listen to the other teams or take any input from our leaders because we are isolated, we are independent. So obviously this is wrong. You're part of an organization. So we need to interact in order to create the shared outcome. If we start to say we don't have any input, we don't need any input, then it's blindness, not autonomy. So we need information internally and externally in our evaluations in order to make good choices. So remember we're interacting to achieve something larger than ourselves, also goes for teams. If you're completely independent of the rest of the organization, considering separating it out. You don't have to be a part of them because you're completely independent. It's probably easier, less complexity. Autonomy doesn't need leadership. We've talked about this. We actually do. We need a direction, we need alignment, we need commitment, but formal leadership roles are optional. But they're also dependent on context. So do consider your context. Don't throw away all leaders because I said so. I love leadership. I do leadership development. I think leaders are great, but they have a different role. So the kind of leadership necessary is not that traditional imposition of setting direction. It's coaching, it's facilitating, it's a serving leadership style. These are the outcomes we're looking for. What do you need in order to make that happen? So leadership enables autonomy, not trying to control it. So we're not trying to control autonomy, we're trying to enable it. So we need a grown-up in the room, or else we'll end up with a Home Alone party. I've heard this so many times. A similar version of this is people can't just do whatever they want. So we're saying we need a grown-up in the room, but what if the people who are motivated and committed to that shared outcome? Why can't we then treat them as adults and suppose that they actually can move towards that direction and do what makes sense to them? If we're telling them how to do it instead, having supervision, people telling them how to think, well, they're going to end up with doing stuff that doesn't make sense to them. No wonder we have disengaged workforce. So if we truly believe that people have good intentions and can think well for themselves, why not treat them as adults? I'm not saying don't challenge them. Please do. As leaders, challenge their thinking, challenge their approaches, but do it in an adult-to-adult way. You can even say, well, we don't really think you have the competency to perform this task. What do you think about that? Let's have a conversation, a real conversation about that. What do you need in order to make that happen? Do you need extra competency? So we can challenge them. But we need to have or hold that for them so it makes sense to them still. The last one is that autonomy is not for everyone. And this comes out of some personality just don't get it. They can't be autonomous. They can't do self-organization because it's in their personality. Well, personality does affect behavior. It does. But I really think that that isn't the big thing when we talk about autonomy and self-organization. Because check in with yourself here. If you have people who are not motivated by the purpose, the shared outcome that we are going to create together, they're going to show up expecting a paycheck for their hours. That's disengagement. I'm doing the task. I don't care what happens. So I'm just going to do the task. So that's also more a transactional leadership style. Also, if it's not safe to contribute, if people can be punished or ridiculed for how they contribute, they will hold back. It's much safer having some people telling you what to do when it's unsafe, because if anything fails, it's their fault. So you won't get engagement, you won't get self-organization if it's not safe. So as you can see, I find this really fun. I find it exciting, engaging, and I'm going to be here all day. So please come and talk with me, or you can also check in on LinkedIn. I'm going to wear a white t-shirt. So if you're looking for me, I'm going to be in a white t-shirt. So thank you for your time and attention, and thank you for being here.